Thank you so much for joining for this section's presentation on professional etiquette in academia. So in this section, we're pretty much going to be talking about acceptable behaviors or etiquette commonly expected or displayed in academic settings, in academia, in the field or profession that many faculty and or researchers strive to work in. So before we get started and jump too far into things, it might be important to highlight the definition of professional etiquette. Etiquette generally means a code of polite behavior in society or among members of a profession or group. In academia, certain unwritten protocols are important to be aware of, and they make up this code of polite behavior that we expect. Now let's chat about some basic things related to acceptable behavior. Pretty standard, but when you are greeting someone and or writing an email or a letter, you should formally address everyone. Make sure you formally address them in written communications or correspondence, but definitely in greetings, formally address them until they tell you otherwise. So an example of this would be referring to someone as Dear Professor Smith, Dr. Johnson, Mr. Flint, Miss Steele, President Law. And maybe on one of those occasions, they would respond back and say, "Oh, no, dear, please call me Mrs. Rhea," or "Don't worry about it. Oh, drop the formalities. Mrs. Shantae is fine. Mrs. Steele is fine." Some people don't want to be addressed by doctor, president, advisor, dean, etc., and other people do. And maybe they choose to determine when and where they can be addressed that way. But if you go ahead and address them formally each time, you will make sure you have covered your bases. Another basic is related to conducting and publishing research responsibly. This is something we all should know to do. However, I want to say that a basic principle or expectation is that you, as a researcher or individual working in the field of academia, are doing things responsibly. You are abiding by compliance measures and you are interacting with your collaborative research team appropriately. A position statement was actually developed at the Second World Conference on Research Integrity that took place in Singapore in July 2010. So, Chapter 50 in Mayer and Stenick's book, Promoting Research Integrity in a Global Environment, has a copy of what was developed. During that Second World Conference on Research Integrity, they decided to develop two position statements setting out international standards for responsible research publication for editors and authors, and these can be found online. So on this screen, you'll actually see some of those, right? Um, if you look at the green box, authors should take collective responsibility for submitted and published work. What that means is if you are a trainee who decides I'm going to publish with my friend and you two work up an article and maybe it gets published and you're really excited, but someone contacts the journal and says, "This is actually inaccurate. I tried to duplicate this study and I found blah, blah, blah." Author one cannot blame author two for the mistake. Author two should not blame author one for the mistake. Collectively, you all are both responsible for what you submitted and what you published. Also, look at the yellow box. Researchers should strive to describe their methods clearly and unambiguously so that their findings can be confirmed by others. You should use more detail, especially in the methods section. Give the recipe, give the steps, give the temperature. Let people know how they can confirm or duplicate. And then funding sources and relevant conflicts of interest should be disclosed. So you might read an article and or see even Dr. Johnson's publications, the acknowledgement section or a section that says there was no conflict of interest reported. It's not just because he thought, hey, this is a great idea, I should add this. It's because there are standards that were created that authors and researchers are to abide by, and it's helping to create some consistency within the field, and therefore it is one of those expected behaviors related to etiquette. We talk about it regularly in the Johnson lab, in the SMART lab, because we know that when you are developing as a researcher, you might not be aware of how important it is to have conversations about authorship and responsibility at the beginning of a collaborative effort. And when I say the beginning, I mean the very beginning, before a document is typed up, an outline is drawn up, students necessarily start doing any literature review research. You should determine who is going to be first author. Who's going to do what? What does first author look like for you? If it's a two-person team, the line can be a little bit blurry because a person might literally do 55% and another person 45% of the work and they still get first authorship. When it is a three-plus person team, it becomes a little bit easier to determine who's going to do what and or what that looks like, and or it becomes a little bit easier to clearly identify who carried the bulk of the project. So another piece of the conversation should be, where do we hope to present our findings? Because it's all about dissemination. That is another expected behavior within the field of academia. If you're doing great research and you're finding cool things, we expect dissemination. You should share this with the world. So where will you share it? Will it be a place aligned with the content or subject matter of your publication and research? Will it be somewhere within your field? Will it be multiple places? Will you decide to present on the methods of your project at one research conference and then focus on the content or findings in another? Will one person go present on everyone's behalf? There are sometimes situations where it's beneficial for one person to go. Maybe I'm going to help you with the registration costs for this conference, and you are going to travel there and you are going to present, and I get to put it on my CV, but I'm not going to go because it's not financially lucrative for me to do so. And then where is this work going to be published? Will it be a prestigious journal within the field? Or will it be an open access journal because you care more about dissemination? Will you seek both? What will be published first? Will one person be first author on the first publication and then the other person be first author on the second? Will the authorship change based on the research publication versus the research presentation? Maybe person A is first author when you present at the CPDD conference, but person B is first author when you publish because person A is about to do an internship this summer and person B is going to have to carry most of the weight. These are important conversations to have to avoid confusion and or poor working environments or relationships. I want to make sure to highlight that as a researcher, you have a responsibility to disclose information to your research team about any errors that occur. And as a SMART lab affiliated trainee, you have a responsibility to disclose information about any errors that occurred to Dr. Johnson and the SMART Lab staff because we need to know about conflicts of interest. We need to know about errors. Everyone makes mistakes. It's about accountability and owning up to them. Also, are there violations of HIPAA, FERPA? Was there a data breach? The data set that you all will have access to will be de-identified, and Dr. Johnson will be providing you with that. So you don't necessarily have to worry in that area. We're not worried so much. But let's say you have an opportunity to take on another project with Dr. Johnson where you'll be interviewing individuals and you have written down a bunch of notes, you have a folder full of consent forms, and they're in your car and your car is stolen. Do not be afraid to bring this to our attention. We need to work together collaboratively and make sure that all of our responses to this incident are aligned with how USF, the institution, would like us to handle it, how we should handle it within the field to make sure that we're being compliant and demonstrating our own research integrity. Just in case you're going through this presentation and you're thinking, okay, these are things that are good to know for the future, I want to reiterate that academic etiquette it applies now. It's at play even your first year in school. As a college student, paying a hefty penny to be here, your attendance in class, your engagement with the course curriculum, and or your assignments are expected. If you are interested in abiding by the code of polite behavior as an undergraduate student, you should avoid doing things like disrupting the learning environment with side conversations or outbursts. You want to place your phone on vibrate and be very attentive. Some faculty find it super disrespectful when students are on their cell phones and openly doing everything but listening or looking towards the front of the class. As a faculty member, when I have student presentations taking place or I invite a guest speaker, I talk to my students to reiterate how important it is to be respectful, that this person is taking the time out of their day to attempt to facilitate a presentation. And we want to make sure that we're engaged. Of course, not all students do that, but you should understand that by not doing that, by not paying attention, by sneaking and texting on your phone. Yes, emergencies happen, but you should step outside the classroom for those emergencies. By doing those things, you are potentially violating a code of behavior that is expected by your faculty member, and that could come back into play when you need a letter of recommendation or extra credit. So now we are going to have a brief conversation related to etiquette and social items like social events, gatherings, or networking with other individuals inside and outside of the field. I am sure that you heard it, but first impressions are everything. Someone once told me that the three C's are super important when it comes to first impressions, and that's confidence, competence, and credibility. Credibility is impacted when your brand is impacted. You are your brand. You are a walking, talking billboard for yourself, for your future goals. And your ability to appear credible is super important. Don't allow individuals to find you lying or misrepresenting yourself. And though you might not think you're doing it intentionally, if you show up late to a lot of places, then you are misrepresenting yourself, and individuals might find you are not dependable or credible. If you are constantly speaking about something that you're not as familiar with, maybe to boast or appear more knowledgeable than you are, then your competence is definitely going to be questioned. But more than that, the first time you meet someone, you want to appear confident, confident about the interaction, confident about your delivery of your introduction, and making sure that you are looking a person in the eye and being as optimistically respectful and cheerful as possible. So there's three introduction elements that you should be mindful of: your facial expressions, your handshake, and your greeting. Of course, in this post-COVID environment, not everybody is comfortable with a handshake, and you might want to ask or observe and see if other people are shaking hands. You might want to wave. Some people are doing elbow bumps or fist bumps to avoid hand-to-hand contact. But either way, you should understand what you hope to do and have your plan B. If you know that you care to shake hands and someone else might not be comfortable, maybe it's a wave, maybe it's a wave with a head nod and a big smile to make sure that they understand that you are greeting them. And then know what you will say. In addition to knowing what you will say, you should have an idea of what you will do based on the environment you are in. So I want to talk a little bit about social time and substances. I remember the first time I went to a networking event as a recruiter. There was an abundance of alcoholic drinks flowing, and I was shocked and confused since I was technically at a work event. I decided to play it safe until I could ask my supervisor about her expectations for me when I attended those type of events. So I did not drink anything that night. My supervisor said it was okay, but I still avoided it, thinking it might be a trick or a test until I attended an event with her. And she was there at another recruiting event and she was drinking an alcoholic beverage. I decided that it was okay to indulge, but I gave myself my own rules. I decided that I would only drink wine in public settings and I would not finish my glass. Nowadays, because in certain states marijuana has been legalized for recreational purposes and alcohol is often present at social events, it's important for you to understand you will come to the similar crossroad. What will you do? Despite what you do, understanding as long as you are of legal age to partake, you have to remember the purpose of your attendance at the event. Is it to network and demonstrate your competence or professionalism, your brilliance? If so, make sure you're able to do that with the clearest mind necessary. So, if you are above the age of 21 and there are alcoholic beverages being shared, you might decide to pick up one and sip on it while having a conversation with someone else, being mindful that the purpose is not to be inebriated and or even if you are a slightly fast talking, excited, louder individual on a regular basis, someone that does not know you might assume because of the beverage in your hand that you are intoxicated or drunk, and that is why you are talking so quickly. And your brand, people's impressions of you, might be impacted by them seeing you participate in drinking or something else. And when you're in public, especially at a smart lab related event, you are representing yourself, the smart lab, Dr. Johnson, USF, your family, and sometimes it might just be safest to pick up a bottle of water. As a novice researcher or young academic, you will be attending a lot of academic events. And so I want to bring up some things that some students forget to think about while they're on their way or while they're preparing to go. Please always remember how you travel, your experience from the Uber to the airport, from the doors of the airport to the gate. It is important to remember that someone is always watching. If you are lucky, you might find yourself sitting next to the director of your dream job on your next flight. So, the phone calls that you have, how you handle yourself in the restroom on a break, and your interaction with strangers can be life changing. You do not want to be so wrapped up in a phone conversation with your best friend as you're walking to the airport complaining about how you have to go to this stupid event wearing your most comfortable pajama pants in a public setting and then find out that you are sitting next to the director of NIDA or someone who Dr. Johnson would want you to take the time to make a great impression with. So, when you travel, know that you are not just traveling by yourself in a room full of strangers. You are traveling in a room full of individuals who might open up a door that changes your life. If you've never been to a conference, local, national, or international, it might seem like a very overwhelming or confusing type of event. But think of this as a place to get amazing insight and knowledge on an area or topic or field that you might be associated with. Think of it as an opportunity to network with some of the brightest, well known people in the field. Think of it as an opportunity to learn, to um, talk about potential new opportunities, collaborate with, and be strategic throughout the whole time that you are there. So, I want you to mentally brace yourself for a very tiring but rewarding experience. Some individuals like to go to conferences so that they could take some time and sneak away from the main venue and go and explore whatever city or state they are in. If you, for example, will be going to Minnesota, you might think, oh, it would be amazing to go to the Mall of America. If there is time, that would be amazing for you to go to. However, your focus should be on the conference. The conference, the conference, the conference, making sure you're looking at the presentations that are taking place. What presentations are speaking to variables that you're using in your own research? Can you attend that conference, find out if someone has published their work already, and then cite them in your article? Which presentation is going to help you learn more about a topic of interest or give you the opportunity to meet someone that you are hoping to meet and potentially intern with? From often 7 a.m. until about 7 or 8 p.m., it can be a long day. You might need an energy drink or a coffee, but you definitely want to arrive to sessions on time with a notepad. You want to look engaged. You want to sit towards the front. You don't want to be caught all on your phone. And you don't want to get caught in a clique. Try and make friends or friendly with individuals that you do not know, students from other schools, graduate students who might be going to doctoral programs that you would like to enter into. Remember, the conference experience is super rewarding. You just have to make sure that you remember it is important to be as present as possible. And not only present, present and professional. We do not expect you to go to Ann Taylor or one of the men's warehouse stores and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on clothes for the conference. But we do expect you to understand what professional dress means and how important your first impressions are, and put some effort into gaining clothing that makes you feel confident and comfortable to get through a long, potentially 12-hour day. And you can do that on a budget at a thrift store. For example, on Wednesday, Salvation Army often has 50% off clothing, and it might take 25 minutes to dig through a rack and find a blazer that fits and can be tailored, but it will be well worth it. In addition, if you know that you do not walk well in high heels, you might want to find comfortable shoes. Gentlemen, maybe if you're not great at tying a tie, you want a clip on, or you want to find a collared shirt that has a polo on it. Whatever it is, you want to make sure you are aware of your appearance, ready to make a first impression. If you look at the quote on the side, people will make judgments before you even speak based on the way you look. Most definitely, your physical appearance matters, the way you dress, your hygiene, it all matters. Yes, hygiene. You don't want to be overpowering. Imagine having the opportunity to meet the person you wanted to meet, some brilliant researcher who you love to learn from, and they can't stop sneezing because you poured a whole bottle of cologne all over you this morning and they are allergic. You definitely want to make sure that your hygiene is appropriate, but you are not causing others discomfort. And when you find yourself in a professional meeting, an event, a seminar, a presentation, ask questions. Please remember to introduce yourself, ask your question loudly, slowly, so that people can understand it. And if you can remember to introduce yourself as a USF Smart Lab trainee, that would be amazing. Kudos to you. I remember my first semester in college, one of my faculty members announced that they were having a friend come to talk to the class, and she gave us a rundown about what she expected. She said, I expect to see at least 5 of you ask a question. And the 20 or so students that were in the room kind of looked at each other. And I thought it was interesting that she was telling us to ask a question and we didn't even know if we needed clarification on anything. But once I started wearing a facilitator, presenter, teacher hat, I realized the value of questions for the learning environment. Not just questions, but also comments and observations. Some might enjoy having no questions, thinking it's a sign that their presentation was so amazing and delivered so well that everything was crystal clear and nobody had any points for clarification. But since the learning environment should be multi-directional, in my opinion, I love for students to raise their hands and engage with the subject matter, even if it just means saying, wow, Dr. Still, I thought it was really interesting that you said this because in my class we're learning this and I hadn't thought about that. Just sharing a comment so that someone else might have the time to think or want to expand on that comment. Because those who are listening, though they might not raise their hand, are also learning from what comes out of your mouth. Remember, it is nice to be nice. So even if you are just an undergraduate student or a graduate student, if you can, remember to show appreciation to all those people who take the time to support you, review your manuscript, serve on a committee, or encourage you towards greatness. Thank you cards, birthday cards, post interview emails, they should be an intentional part of your MO or mode of operation. I wish I had done it as an undergraduate student since the faculty and staff members that I was around had the greatest impact on my journey. But it wasn't until I was in grad school that I started learning my professors' birthdays, trying to coordinate doing something nice for them at the end of the semester, and not just rushing off to Christmas break after turning in my final. In my doctoral program, I started buying bulk Christmas cards and birthday cards. And for the individuals who served on my committee, I would celebrate their birthdays. But the individuals who I took classes with in the fall, I would just write them a Christmas card and wish them a good break with their families. And then in the spring, I would give a thank you card saying, I enjoyed learning from you. And this helped me develop a good relationship with them. Sometimes I would visit them in office hours the semester after I had taken their classes. And it made it a lot easier for me to ask them for a letter of recommendation when that time came. Just a note. Always remember it's nice to be nice. We definitely only touched on the surface of professional etiquette today, but if you have questions, need clarity on something discussed in this presentation, let's chat about it. Feel free to reach out via email, nida-smart@usf.edu, or bring up your question or comment in the next Smart Lab gathering. And as always, go forth and be great.